Um, so we are on StackerNews, and I am once again going to be reading the top dev stories from the week. Not really from the week though. This is going to be the top dev stories from basically the last month. I'm going to look through all the ones that I haven't read on stream or clicked through because I missed last week. I think I got the week before, but yeah, definitely a lot of stories flew by over the last few weeks. So excited to get into them. And then later on, I'm going to be doing some live coding and starting on a very big project that I kind of just want to get a basic feature working for it. And this is going to be a Ghost Nostr bridge. So if you don't know what Ghost is, that is basically an open source content publishing platform that a lot of people use. A lot of people in Bitcoin actually use it. Part of the reason is it's open source. It works like a lot of the content posting platforms you know and love, but it's cheaper, lighter weight, open source. So yeah, I'm gonna try and grok that and see if we can get some Ghost cross posts going into Nostr. So I think that'll be pretty cool. But yeah. Let's get into it. So I touched on this last time. Our top story. Am I zoomed in enough? Let's zoom in a little more. I'll do like that. Sweet. Yeah, so this was from last week. I think I already touched on this, but I'll just show it really quickly. I found that Cash App has inactive but existing Lightning address endpoints. And these Lightning address endpoints are mapped to users' cache tags, but it seems to only be users that have interacted with the Bitcoin product with Cash App. So that's kind of interesting. So they just set aside Lightning addresses for all these people. And it also has Zaps enabled, which is very cool. So Lightning address and Zaps coming soon to Cash App seems to be the case. We'll see how soon. I'm sure there's a lot of regulatory pressure going on, but yeah, there was a lot going on in this thread, so I won't touch on it again, but it was a fun little investigation we got into a few weeks back. Okay, so first unread story, top story from, what is this, 31st of May, about 10 days ago. So writing software robustness versus being exact. And this is from Zuspotirko. Zuspotirko. I think I got that. It sounds very Russian. Whoa, 18 votes and we're 50-50. That's fascinating. Okay, let's jump into it. I'll send you a few zaps up front. All right. Writing software, robustness versus being exact. Hi there, today we had a simple but interesting discussion because a user complained about our software, refusing to generate his Excel file because the name he typed in was .txt. Software threw an error, value error, invalid extension for engine, blah, 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 .txt. Might not have been the most understandable error message, but whatever. So far, so good. The uninteresting part in this specific example, it would take 1 minute to catch this error and rename it. Rename the input to .xlsx. So that's like the proper Excel namespace. What do you call it? File type? That's what I call robustness approach. Okay? The being exact approach would be to insist on the user input being used as intended, and every component insisting of getting the correct inputs before it. Okay, I see where this is going. The interesting general question, what is your opinion on how software should handle things like that in general, especially deeper in the stack? If we build software on top of software, on top of dependencies, on top of more dependencies, should we always insist our software to be used precisely? Which things should be catched and handled? There are extreme cases in both directions, but what is a good rule of thumb? Poll is how you would handle our situation. I chose the robustness approach. Tell me your thoughts on this general topic in the comments below. Okay, so the poll ended at exactly 50-50. I wish I could vote now, but I wouldn't have a clear vote here. Okay, we got some comments below, but I'm gonna give my opinion on this. So I think this is an interesting question. It's an interesting problem. From my perspective, a lot of what I'm doing is I'm building first iterations of some kind of app or some kind of software. And when I'm doing that, 99% of the time, I am building along a happy path, meaning I'm building along a path assuming that the user knows what they're doing. They know if I say put in an invoice, they know to put in an invoice. If I say, you know, whatever, provide this input, provide this input. I'm assuming they know. Now, that's the first iteration, right? We're just trying to get it to work for the first time. And maybe after it's working, I might go back through and I might find like, okay, what are the big holes in here? You know, maybe I check if, maybe I have the user input an invoice. And then I go back through it and I'm like, let me make sure that this invoice has a value, or maybe make sure that this invoice has a value greater than 0, right? You might start to account for these more robust possibilities. But really in that second iteration, it's still almost a security consideration, or a consideration of like, I just don't want my app to crash the first time someone uses it. And from there, I guess, from my approach, I'm trying to cover all the holes that I find, that I know that are common, that are big, that break the flow. And from there, once you get further along, you know, maybe you release your apps and the users start using it. I think you're more in our friend's scenario here, Zuspotirko, where, okay, you're expecting a .txt, but the user put in a .xlsx. Right? This is a scenario where your user is giving you information. They're telling you something. They had an expectation, and that expectation was not met. You can interpret that a lot of ways. In this scenario, it's an easy fix, and that's kind of what he's mentioning. Is like, well, I can just, you know, what do you say? It would take 1 minute to catch this error and rename the input to .xlsx. That's what I call robustness approach. Yeah. So this is a quick, easy fix, and your user, a real user, ran into it. So you know that it's a real problem. Maybe it's not a big problem, but at least someone ran into it. And so you take care of it. And so your software becomes more robust through feedback and through your users using it. And I guess just the general idea I'm getting across is like, you as an individual developer, even a team of developers, there's only going to be so many things that you're able to have forethought about, as far as what are security holes, what are errors, what are user mistakes that might happen along the flow of your app. But then you're not going to be able to make it perfect. Like, no matter what, even though this isn't ideal, in the world of software, the users are the ones kind of testing it a lot of times, because the devs, we probably thought about everything that we could. I mean, maybe they didn't have time, maybe something got rushed, but you're trying to cover all these errors, and it's just, the users are always going to find something that you didn't think of, or always going to be, you know, running this obtuse browser or this Chrome extension that blocks something that's important on your website. Like, there will always be stuff like that you won't find. So I think, in a sense, like, trying to go after robust software, it's a good desire, but you can only cover so much ground with that. And I think it's almost better to start with an exactness principle and then expand out into robustness as users are using it. Of course, lots of hand waving here, lots of asterisks for the fact that, you know, depending on what kind of software you're using, if it's a hardware wallet, Bitcoin, like, that's very, very different considerations. But if you're just building apps like I am, or providing simple services for users, I think this is kind of the approach. But I also think, in general, like, robustness is like a state of mind, and it's the state of mind that, like, even though you have this cute little app or this cute little flow you want to put together in software, that you're thinking in the back of your mind as you're building this, how do I break this? How would someone cheat this? And I had this experience recently, actually, like, doing some contracting work, basically, that involved Nostr and Lightning and basically kind of a service that was a little bit complicated. It was a simple flow, but the overall attack area was pretty big. So I was able to build my simple flow in a few days, but for weeks I was thinking about and fixing these attacks surfaces I was thinking about, or these ways that you could DDoS my server, these ways that you could kind of break or cheat the flow to get some outcome that I didn't want. So, you know, it was exactness and robustness. But then here I am and my service is live and I am watching the logs all the time and I'm looking for these new errors, these unknown unknowns that I haven't found before. So that's kind of my mixed bag of an answer. I think that, especially from an app dev's perspective, starting with the exactness, knowing what you want to build, it's just an MVP. Like, what's the minimum viable product, the minimum viable flow, and build it and get it to work, and then make it robust, right? And then cover your ground. Yeah, unless you're dealing with people's money or dealing with people's privacy, I think that is a fair approach. Let's see what the people said here. We got net static. 30 some zaps. Okay, your question of robustness versus exactness frames the two as if they're at odds with each other. You can have both robustness and exactness. The UX problem encountered by your user wasn't about robustness. It was about how you decide to engineer your experience. Okay. If you were going to force an extension for a specific output type, why allow the user to specify an extension at all? That's interesting. Doing it this way is setting them up for failure. It's like if I asked you for advice on something I've already made a decision on. This is a good point. So I don't totally understand the context of the software here, but if we have a scenario of maybe like I'm making a button to where you can upload a file in a web page, right? You can open, with the user's permission, you can open their file explorer, right? But you can actually limit the kinds of file types that you'll even allow as input. And you'll notice this sometimes. Like if you open, you know, what's an example I can think of? Balena Etcher. If you've ever used Balena Etcher, that's what it's called, right? Yeah, so this is a software that lets you essentially like select an image, flash it to a drive. That's all you do. It's a pretty useful tool. It's open source. But when you go and you select your image, it will limit it to only the .isos, right? So you'll open your whole downloads, but everything will be grayed out, and you'll only see the .isos. So that's what this kind of makes me think of. If you're building on libraries that have this problem, make sure as many inputs that would lead to inconsistent states in the library are disallowed at the user input generated from your code. Never correct things for the user implicitly if you can help it. Yeah, so this is kind of, I guess this is an exactness and robustness principle together, because you're limiting what the user can do, but only because you know that you only have robustness for a very limited set of possible inputs. Best case is you never allow them to make a mistake in the first place. But if that's not possible, you can catch inputs that will potentially lead to errors and inform the user to take action on a proposed fix. And if you need to implicitly correct input as a last resort, although I can't imagine a scenario where this would be needed right now, then you should absolutely notify the user that this correction happened so that they don't get confused on how they got their output. So if it would lead to inconsistent states in the library, make sure as many inputs that would lead to those inconsistent states are disallowed at the user input generated from your code. Yeah, so I guess this is, he's kind of saying like, block this at the level of the form, or maybe at the level of API. Maybe you have to do both, right? You have form validation on the front end, but maybe you have validation on the back end as well, on the API endpoint. So the form itself shouldn't be able to submit an Excel file. But then even if someone hits the API directly, that the API would check that and would be able to throw back some kind of somewhat informative error, like, you know, this is the wrong file type. It's very difficult. I mean, especially when you're building something that's a complicated flow, like there's going to be so many holes along that flow. It's so many places where you need to catch errors. So, I mean, this is really not easy from my experience, at least. Great comment, net static. Thank you. Okay, Mateus Deep. I only vote for exactness because I think in this case it would be better to ask the user if they were sure they wanted that extension and give them the option to never ask again and use the robustness approach after that. Okay, so kind of managing expectations. Yeah, this is something definitely to do. Like I do this in my apps sometimes. I have this in Bitcoin Link actually. If you like Bitcoin Link, if you go to Bitcoin Link and you want to create a link with Mutiny, warning, Mutiny is required to be open in order for the receiver to redeem their link directly from your wallet. Right, so I should maybe even make this bigger, but like sometimes it's like, this is really complicated information to express to the user. I'm just literally going to tell them and throw it in their face. And that is not robust necessarily, but it is, I guess it's kind of an exactness approach, but it's a little bit robust because I'm like, hey, I'm giving you the option, but I want you to avoid your expectations being let down, essentially. All right, thanks for that, Mateus. Lumor, pop-up warning dialog with options. Go back, fix, rename to XLSX, ignore, keep.txt. I'll give you a zap, but I kind of disagree. I mean, this is hard. This is like over-engineering a solution to the problem, because really the problem is you have like a limited scope of inputs that you can handle, and you're gonna build a bunch of complicated UI to like help the user wrap their mind around that. Like really, you should abstract it away, and it should either just work or be a very clear error that the user knows what to do with. But sweet, great, very heady article to start off with here. So sweet, thanks for that. Robustness versus being exact. Okay, these other ones I read through. Let's look at this one. Imposter syndrome is real by Jose. Shout out to Jose, legendary devs poster and Plebdev. Over the last few months, whenever I attend meetups or conferences, I always face the dreaded question, what do you do? I start explaining my journey, completing a coding bootcamp, making websites, showcasing the apps I've created, and discussing my contributions to various projects. After listening to my experiences, people often respond with, oh, you're a developer. I've never called myself a developer or a software engineer because I've never held such a role at a company and never went to college. However, hearing others refer to me as a developer has been reassuring and tells me that I'm on the right path. Nice. Sweet. So thank you for sharing, Jose. This is a very relatable feeling that a lot of us have, and I still have this very often. And this just so happens to be the very reason, or one of the primary reasons, that I created Plebdevs, I guess, and started calling myself Bitcoin Plebdev. You know, because before I was very public in Bitcoin, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, you know, I was into Bitcoin for a very long time, very alone, and I was on Twitter, and I was mostly just lurking. I followed a lot of Bitcoin accounts, but I never interacted. And then eventually I started learning how to code. Took a very long time for me to get the basic chops, but started writing some basic websites, some basic programs, some basic apps. I started playing around with my Bitcoin node for the first time and interacting with Bitcoin at a little bit of a lower level. And at a certain point, I guess I thought, you know, at a certain point there will be a moment to where I'm a developer. But it never really felt like that. And in fact, a lot of times the further deeper I got and the more people I met that were also developers, the worse I felt, because I felt like an idiot. I felt like what I knew was 2% of the whole world that I was claiming is my main vocation in life, right? If I say I'm a developer, but you know, I can hardly make an ugly website, what am I really saying? Like, you probably shouldn't trust me. And these are a lot of the thoughts that go through your head around imposter syndrome. And I think, I mean, I must have talked about this a decent amount before, but there's a lot of competing advice when it comes to imposter syndrome. But my solution was to call myself a plebdev, essentially. My solution was like, okay, I know that I want to be a developer. I know that I'm going to keep working on this, but I also know that I'm not the best. And I don't want to misrepresent myself as someone that is an expert developer or someone that is more capable than I am. I want to frame myself as who I honestly am. And who was I honestly? I was a learner who was a Bitcoiner who was trying to become a developer. So I was someone on the path. And I just thought about names in my head of like, what is a way that I can frame this idea of that I'm just a developer, I'm a learner, I'm focused on Bitcoin. And that's where I came up with Bitcoin Plebdev. And then with Bitcoin Plebdev, I just pulled the Plebdev out of that. And I was like, hey, that's a cool little snippet right there. That's a cool framing. Maybe there's something to that. And I think it's a huge advantage. I think it's a way to frame yourself. It's a way to own your weaknesses. And not really be ashamed or embarrassed about them. But it's also like, you know, it's, what do people say? Under promise and over deliver as well. That's a way to do that. Like, don't over promise yourself. Don't over market yourself. Under market yourself, and then over deliver if you can. And so that's the framing of Plebdevs. That's why I think that framing is very powerful when it comes to imposter syndrome. But something else I would say that's almost a little opposing to what I just said is that you probably are an imposter. You probably are an imposter. You probably shouldn't be here. But that's okay. And so this is something, I don't remember who told me this. It was someone in my boot camp when I was talking to them about imposter syndrome. They were like, Austin, you are an imposter. You are not a software developer, and you're trying to become a software developer from zero, right? What is imposter is maybe just a negative way of saying it, but that really is what you're doing. You're working your way from the outside in. And I think this can be another powerful framing, you know, realizing that there's a lot that you don't know, and taking on that humility of the fact that there are many unknowns, but despite that, you're still making this conscious effort, and you're also representing it publicly, that you are trying to go down this path. And what we tell ourselves in our head is that, you know, we want to be without blemishes, without scratches. We want to represent ourselves as whole and strong and everything like that. But actually, people really will admire you if you're honest about your failures, if you're honest about your weakness. If you tell them that you're just trying to learn, people will step up and they'll start to help you. And this is actually one of my biggest regrets in my early journey, is that I was so quiet and so alone trying to figure out how to code on my own. And I wasted a lot of time doing that. If I would have just gone out on day one and been like, hey, I'm trying to learn how to code. My name is Austin. I love Bitcoin. I need help. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. This is what I want to do eventually. Like, people would have come out of the woodworks to start helping me. And in fact, when I did start speaking out publicly, that's what happened. Is people wanted to help me, and people admired me just for going out and saying what I wanted to do and trying to push work public. And so, wow, a lot of scattered thoughts there. I could probably talk about this for a while, especially if I prepared my thoughts a bit more. But you know, for Jose or for anyone else that feels similar, which is a lot of people, basically everyone that is in the process of learning how to code, you know, I would encourage you to consider these bits of mindset, you know, that you are an imposter, but that's okay. And then to frame yourself as a learner and realize that people will want to help you. They will encourage you. They will admire you if you frame yourself as a learner, especially if you ship what you're doing publicly. And this is what, you know, for me, this is the coolest experience when I see Plebdevs shipping some kind of work in public, no matter how polished or cool or random it is. That's one of the coolest things. And this is what's great about Jose. Like, Jose is sharing with us his feelings of imposter syndrome. But I can go, let's go to his Jose 3. Yeah, not to, well, I'm not even really doxing, but this is Jose's Twitter, and creator Time Chain Q, full stack developer, IT specialist, seeking job opportunities to learn and grow, co-founder of Viva Bitcoin. Right, so he's framing himself as a learner, definitely right here, but showing you what he's building. And this guy, he's showing off contributions he's made. He's posting about it. He just made a new website 5 hours ago called satsleft.info. Let's look at this. This is really cool. 93.8% 6% sats already mined. And there is a very large number of sats left. How many is this? That's 100,000, 100 million, 100 billion. Is that so? 128 trillion, 934 billion, 60,190,011. That's a lot of sats left. So that's very cool. He's just continuing to build stuff and ship it. He gets an idea, he puts it together. And I really think this is the path. I think this is the right thing to do. But it goes to show that, like, either way, you're gonna struggle with these feelings. And especially if you're stuck on something, if you're having a bad day, or you're stuck for a week or stuck for a month. Like, I've been there. Like, there's been times I've been so stuck that I almost quit programming forever, It's like when you have such a bad match in a video game or something, and you just literally, you don't play it ever again. I've almost been there, and lots of people do that. But it's just really stepping back into that framing, and realizing that it's quite natural to feel this way. Everyone feels this way. And in fact, even people that are senior software engineers and stuff like that with a lot of responsibility, they might feel this way as well. Yeah. One last thing I'll say on this. This is a cool story, a cool little snippet. So, I used to work at a boot camp. It was Bloom Tech Institute, if you've heard of that. It used to be called Lambda School. So I worked at this boot camp as a team lead. And I kind of worked there after I completed the curriculum on my own. So I basically had completed the curriculum as a student, and I was looking for a job, and in the meantime I was working for the boot camp in the position called a team lead. So I basically had a small group full of students that were going through the boot camp, and so we would have a small group every night. We would talk about what we learned today. We might review some code. I would review their final projects at the end of the week or at the end of the month, stuff like that. So it's really a lot of responsibility, and I was very new. But I was just teaching them, or just helping them with the homework that I had finished 2 months ago. So it wasn't horrible. It wasn't being like thrown out in the middle of the water. So I was the team lead. There was always someone in the group that was smarter than me and better at programming than me, and they knew the material better than me, right? So here I am, I'm showing up to be the team lead every night for this meeting, and I'm just dreading the moment that I say something wrong, and this person who's supposed to be my student or whatever is correcting me. Right, so that didn't feel very good. It made me feel like an idiot. And also the fact that these people, a lot of times, they were genuinely new. Like, there was a guy in my small group who had just started coding. He literally wrote his first lines of code in the boot camp. And 2 or 3 months later, he was better at JavaScript than me. And I had been doing it for a year. Right, like, how is that supposed to make you feel? Like, you feel like a complete idiot. And that's how I felt. But the nuance of all of these things, it comes over time. And the reality is, over time, a lot of those people, especially the people that were, quote, smarter and better at programming than me, a lot of them, they didn't have a great journey trying to find their first job. Because a lot of them, the reason that they were correcting me and and talking over me in class and talking about all of these things, kind of like a know-it-all. The reason that they were even doing this is because they didn't have very good social skills or emotional intelligence. And they didn't realize that they were intimidating everyone, and they were making everyone in the group feel like an idiot, not just me. Right? So I was selfishly thinking about myself, but really I should have talked to them and been like, hey, you know, you're probably better than me, and like keep me honest, but there's no need to intimidate everyone. There's no need to be a know-it-all. There's no need to correct everything. You know, we're learning together. We're all peers. Blah blah blah. But yeah, a lot of them they had a difficult time finding a job, and you realize that not all of let's say the skills that you're trying to flex, or the skills that you really want for building apps, for being a developer, it's not all as simple as just like, oh, I'm better at programming, I know JavaScript better than you. It's not that simple. There's people that really struggle learning a basic language for a few years, and then once they learn it, they know it better than anyone. Or maybe they barely learn it, but they're so creative that they're able to build projects that no one else thought of. Or maybe they're such a good communicator that they're able to build a team to create a prototype to build something that they can never build on their own, right? So the programming itself, it's just a medium. It's a medium to make stuff happen in the real world, but it takes a stack of these skills to actually realize something. There's lots of really good nerdy developers. Just like there's lots of 12-year-olds in Guitar Center that can go into Guitar Center and plug in a guitar and they can play Eruption by Eddie Van Halen. That's actually a common one. I've seen many 12-year-olds do that at Guitar Center. And you know, you might be sitting on the side and be like, wow, I suck at guitar. I'm never gonna be as good as this kid that can play Eruption. But you know, of those kids, how many of them ever make an album? How many of them ever get their own band or make their own songs or write an original song, right? So it's like, it's not as simple as just a technical skill. And in the same vein, it's not as simple as just, as Jose is saying here, having had a software engineering position before, or having gone to college before, or whatever random metric you arbitrarily decide makes you a developer. It's not that simple. As soon as you write your first line of code, you're a developer, you know? And maybe even before that, as soon as you decide in your head that you're gonna become a developer and you stick to it, you know, you might be a developer. I don't know, it's not up for me to decide, but definitely it started as a mindset thing. And people will try and shake your mindset, or maybe just circumstances will shake your mindset, but just keep it and realize that even if there's a guy that's better than you, even if you're not where you want to be on your journey, you're actually probably already pretty scarce developer. You're probably already a cut above a majority of the people that try to learn how to code. I mean, there's supposedly, according to Replit, they said that there's like 250 million people that have ever written code. How many of those people have ever published a website? Have you published a website before? Jose has. Jose's published a website to real users. Real users have used his software, right? Has that been the case for you? So there's all of these levels where you might differentiate yourself. So even if you're a new developer, you might not be in the class of 250 million, you know, you might be in the class of 100 million. But you can make yourself more scarce and absolutely carve a path for yourself in a lot of different ways. So don't get hung up on the imposter syndrome. Be the best kind of imposter. The kind of imposter that people like me see, and we want to help out and we want to elevate you. Because the reality is, especially here in Bitcoin, we need more devs. We need more Plebdevs. And me, I want to celebrate the devs all the time. So, okay, end of rant. End of rant. Thank you for this awesome little journal from Jose. All right, let's see what the people said in the comments. I'm gonna flash some more zaps over here to my guy. Sweet. Understand the nature of compounding. This is from null count. I've seen this chart before. So 1% every day. So 1% worse every day for 1 year will make you 0.03% versus 1% better every day for 1 year will get you 37.78. I see. Figure 1, the effects of small habits compound over time. For example, if you can get just 1% better each day, you'll end up with a result that are nearly 37 times better than 1 year after another. So this is actually a good kind of big brain idea here. Like as you're declining, the decline is, what is it? It's the opposite of building on itself. It's decompounding from itself. I don't know what the right term would be for that. But the improvement, it actually compounds on itself, right? So 1% better today, 1% better tomorrow. Now we're at 2%. Okay, but now we're 3% better. But now we're 4% better. And even though it's a linear scale, the actual improvement and the capabilities that you have, it compounds. And so that's a good chart. What does he say about it? I have seen many developers graduate with degrees or get jobs where they work for years or decades without compounding. The most reliable way to achieve greatness, okay, let's go null count, is by consistently compounding. When people ask, what do you do? They are not necessarily asking for a job title or certification. They just want to know, in what domain of human existence are you practicing being great? If you desire to get better at development and practice consistently at it, you're a developer. Beautifully said. Beautifully said from null count. You get a bunch of zaps for that. Yeah. And this is another great example. Like a lot of people that graduate with computer science degrees, I don't know if I should say a lot, but they're not always the best at their very skill themselves. When I started my first job out of boot camp, a few like college grads got hired after me, and some of them were from prestigious universities and were very smart. Like they were definitely smarter than me in like almost every single domain. But I saw when I started working with them, they did not know how to build software. They did not know how to problem solve. A lot of them, they could only just like ask questions. Can I do this? Should I do this? How do I do that? Like they just didn't know the full, well-rounded existence as a developer who's just a problem solver and you know, figures things out on their own, asks for help when they need to. So yeah, even a college degree can be potentially a hindrance. But it's like null count says, in what domain of human existence are you practicing being great? And you can be anywhere on that scale. But it's especially like with the more passion that you reply with that, you know, people will understand and they'll respect it. You know, people respect, for one, saying what you want, building in public, and also just being passionate about it. Like people will see that, they'll detect it. And that's one easy advantage you can have. It takes no privilege, no special friends or anything like that, no special skills, just being authentic. All right, Gray Ruby says, for everyone, don't get dismayed. Just keep honing your skills and experience. We'll give you all the confidence you need. Sweet, I agree. And that's another point that could be said, like building something cool is a great way to gain confidence, or building something that you always wanted to build. For me in particular, there was like a first side project that I always wanted to build. Not always, but for years I wanted to build before I had the skills to build it. So I probably had the idea 2.5 years before I built the idea. And when I finally got around and I had built enough basic programming skills to finally solve my very specific problem with this side project. I'll tell you, this side project, it was basically something that allowed me to download and pull all of my Facebook data in one go, do it privately, and then be able to explore it in a UI. That was it. I mean, kind of simple, a little weird, a little complicated, a little specific. But I really wanted to do this, and I saw how I could expand it and go into Twitter and go do all of this stuff. But it was just this vision I had in my head. and it took years to get the skills to build it. But once I finally, it also took me like 8 tries to build it or something like that. Like I failed many times. But when I finally built it, I had just the biggest boost of confidence I swear I've ever had. The kind of boost of confidence that you can only give yourself through that hard-fought work. I mean, even landing a job, like landing my first dev job, that was cool, or landing my first Bitcoin job, that was really cool. But it didn't give me the kind of confidence or the kind of self-worth that doing something hard and alone did, or something that I really cared about, or something that I really struggled with. So that is, yeah, very important thing right there. OT says, put I'm a lifelong student first. That should cancel out the feeling of being an imposter. Hard agree. Say that or just say plebdev. That's just a shorter way of saying the same thing. Satsmate says, in the end, it doesn't matter what formal certifications you have. All that matters is that you have the ability to do the role to the best of your abilities. Or that you can code well. Nobody should feel like an imposter if they are able to add value in the field they're in. Okay, I agree with the that end part, you know. If you're able to add value, if you can add value, if you do add value, that should give you confidence, and that should be a sign that you're not an imposter. But yeah, I think this is true in a job. I think this is true in a job. All that matters is that you have the ability to do the role to the best of your abilities, right? Because they're the one that hired you. But when you're on your own, it doesn't matter if you're trying to the best of your abilities. Sometimes you'll just fail either way. But hey, here's the cool thing. If you fail in public, people will probably admire you, and you'll probably be better off anyway. If you gave an honest effort, if you were authentic, if you were honest. I mean, this is what people in Silicon Valley do. And in fact, they probably abuse it to a degree, because it's easier to get funded as a founder if you have been a previous founder, aka you failed. Most previous founders, they didn't have a successful exit. They're not a previous founder because they sold their company. They're a previous founder because they lost investor money. But funnily enough, that's actually a way to get more money from investors. So they probably abuse it a little bit, but it is definitely true. You know, if you, especially in Bitcoin, if you build something cool, you ship it in public, maybe it doesn't work out. People will know your name. They'll respect you for even doing it in the first place. Because most people don't ever do anything, let alone ship it to end users. So good comment from Satsmate. Koob, oh, let's go. We get a Koob comment here. He says, if you don't feel like you're a developer, this might be really mean. I feel like this is about to be mean. Let's see. If you don't feel like you're a developer yet, don't let them label you as one. Training to be a developer is every bit as admirable as being one. Okay, I agree with that. I believe imposter syndrome is mostly self-imposed by letting or even encouraging people to have a better perception of us than we deserve. Very well said. This is kind of what I was trying to say before, of like under promising and over delivering. But he says it a lot more clear here. When we admit exactly what we aren't pretending to be anything and don't need to fear being found out. It's my experience that I suffer imposter syndrome when I'm actually being an imposter. Likewise, most others experiencing imposter syndrome seem to avoid admitting they aren't who they want to be yet. It's possible this goes the other way. You can have fraudulent humility, but at least there's no fear of being found out to be competent. And he adds another comment here. Imposter syndrome can also come from people having lower standards than you do. In my experience, regardless, don't measure yourself by other people's standards. Internalizing other people's standards cuts both ways. Sweet, great comments here. So first of all, yes, training to be a developer is every bit as admirable as being one. And then imposter syndrome is self-imposed. Yeah, I think there's an interesting, careful balance here. At least for me personally. I totally agree with what he says here, but I'm gonna give some nuance. So when I started learning how to code, I almost had to what would the kids say? I needed to gas myself up. I need to gas myself up internally to believe that I am the shit. I'm gonna build the most amazing software or company one day. Like, I'm gonna do amazing things. I'm gonna change the world. I kind of needed to start filling my head with these thoughts. I wasn't actively tricking myself. I genuinely was excited at the possibilities of what I could do if I knew how to write software well. And so in a sense, I was putting my expectations and my ego far, far from where I was. But for me, it required this level of, creating an identity, an internal identity, a new evolved identity of myself that was far beyond what was reality. That was almost required for me to even eat the dirt that I had to eat to get started, right? Because the hardest thing is going from that 0 to 1. 0 lines of code written to 1, or 0 websites to 1, 0 apps delivered to 1. Like, that is the hardest thing to do. So in a sense, you should figure out whatever you need to figure out to get your foot in the door, and to eat the dirt that you need to eat to essentially get started and build those basic skills. But then you're gonna get humbled over time, right? So I had all these big expectations and that helped me get started, but then those expectations had to crash down to earth eventually, and I had to be very humbled and had to realize, like, okay, my new goal, instead of changing the world, I actually just want to not be poor, right? And I kind of got to that point, like, let's not be poor and write code at the same time. That would be a really cool goal. And I genuinely was satisfied once I reached that goal. And then I was like, oh wow, now I can do more. And so it was a little bit of a back and forth for me. I had to be super ambitious up front to get myself started, but then I had to be humbled across the journey, to kind of actually be realistic with taking these steps and getting to where I wanted to get eventually. So a little bit of nuance from my experience on that. And he says here, it's my experience that I suffer imposter syndrome when I'm actually being an imposter. Likewise, most others experiencing imposter syndrome seem to avoid admitting that they aren't who they want to be yet. Yeah, so I think this is a big one too. Like, we use the term imposter syndrome, but another term that might be valid for a lot of people is envy, or jealousy, or dissatisfaction. And you can get it mixed up with, like, oh, I just don't have self-confidence. Like, it's like, no, you think that you should be this thing that you're not, or you think that you're jealous of the person that's maybe a founder and has already started an app, or is maybe working at a cool company that you want to work at. You want to be that person and you're not. And that is a painful thing. And that's a deeper point even in itself. You would have to start to go philosophical, but one thing I've heard is that you should have as few desires as possible, because desire is essentially a contract that you're going to suffer until you get this thing. And so if you're going to suffer until you get something, it should only be one thing, or a very limited set of things. Or maybe you're one of those people that's just like, you're so chill, you'll just start writing code and you're just going to have a good chill time, and you're going to think it's fun the whole way around. And maybe you'll take everything very casually. If you can do that, you're amazing. You're a better person than me. But I had to, like, blow up my expectations and then crash down and then have a whole dramatic hero's journey. So probably better if you can avoid that. But for most people, you're going to be bouncing between these dynamics of confidence, and then the lack of confidence being crushed, and then probably not being humble, and then being completely humbled. But great comment from Koob here. Thank you for sharing. Okay, Ribberet 19. Keep working hard. You are on the right track. Don't be discouraged. Time and effort will give you the rest. It's very true. Okay, that's the last comment here. One last thing I'll say on this is push code every single day. GitHub GitHub has, remind me later. GitHub has this cool thing, a contribution chart right here, where you get green squares for every single day that you push code, and you can hover over them and you can see, you know, 2 contributions here and 20 here and 12, and yeah. A lot of my days now are 1 contribution, or a lot of them are empty. But something I tried to do for the first few years, and you can track this back and you can see my proof of work is here, is I tried to push code every single day. And this is for the left side of the bell curve, for the 80 IQ plebs. This is some advice here. Literally push code every single day. Eventually you'll make it. Like, eventually you'll make it. If you push code every day, especially if you're sharing, if you're talking about what you're doing, you will, it might not be the most efficient path. You might not be learning things as fast as you could, but you will get there eventually. It will become inevitable that you're going to become a software developer, whatever that means to you. So that's a good simple strategy right there. The low time preference, do something every day for multiple years, and you will just slowly carve yourself into an expert, doing it in the most based way that you can do it, which is by actually getting your hands dirty. And honestly, those are the best developers, the developers that have put 10,000 hours alone building something real. So, hey, you know, that's a thought. But okay, Imposter Syndrome is Real by Jose. Great post. Sorry if I ranted on this one for too long, but you can tell I'm passionate about this topic. Onward. HTMX Intrigue. This is by EK. Y'all know what HTMX is yet? Have you tried it out? People have been telling me to try out HTMX for months. They've almost been chasing me down about HTMX. I haven't tried it yet. I'm still having fun with Next.js. I'm still satisfied with what I can do with that. Let's read about though. HTMX in a nutshell. HTMX is a library that allows you to access modern browser features directly from HTML rather than using JavaScript. Wow, what a pitch. A few days ago, and after reading a lot about HTMX and hate OAS, what the heck is that? HATEOAS. That sounds like a really cool band. Hate OS, or Hate OS. What is this? This page is where. This is a page reworking on the Wikipedia entry on Hate OS. What does this mean? Okay. Hypermedia as the engine of application state. Wow. I would have never guessed. If this was Jeopardy, I would have never guessed that acronym. Hypermedia as the engine of application state is a constraint of the REST application architecture that distinguishes it from other network application architectures. With HateOS, I can't. There's no way I can pronounce this without cracking myself up. A client interacts with a network application whose application servers provide information dynamically through hypermedia. A REST client needs little to no prior knowledge about how to interact with an application or server beyond a generic understanding of hypermedia. By contrast, clients and servers in Common Object Request Broker architecture, CORBA, interact through a fixed interface shared through documentation or an interface description language. Okay, interesting. So it seems like this says it's a constraint of the REST application architecture. So it's basically like a spec for here's exactly how you request data through this architecture versus the REST or CORBA architecture, which is defined case by case. Okay. Let's look at this. For example, this GET request fetches an account resource requesting details in the JSON representation. So GET from here. The response contains these possible follow-up links. Post, a deposit, withdrawal, transfer, or close request to the close account. I see. So it's a completely, utterly standardized interface where with one request, you actually get back links that show you where to make the other requests. Okay, that's a good visual right there. And this is the example of this architecture with HTMX. So you make the request. Oh, but look at this. You get it back literally in HTML. That's the difference instead of JSON. Right, so JavaScript object notation. Obviously, you're dropping that if you're dealing with HTML instead of JavaScript. The response contains following possible follow-up actions. Navigate to a UI to enter a deposit, withdrawal, transfer, or to close request. Wow, that's interesting. So it's using like an API architecture for a UI. That's kind of clever. I mean, I guess it's sort of what you do at a big company. You build a UI based loosely off of the data contract from the server, but that is interesting. Okay, let's keep on reading this. I got distracted with Hate OS. A few days ago, after having read a lot about HTMX and Hate OS, I finally got my feet wet with HTMX. I wanted to include the amount of comments and stats I received on SN on my static site that is generated with Hugo. Let's check it out. So we built a static site with Hugo. I've heard of Hugo. Hugo. World's fastest framework for building websites. So a static site generator. So if you don't know what that means, it's just kind of like can generate a fully static website, so no dynamic kind of React, JavaScript, whatever. It's just HTML, CSS with amazing speed, flexibility. Okay, looks cool. So I guess he built this static site. I wanted to include the amount of comments and stats received on SN on my static site that is generated with Hugo. HTMX intrigue. Here's his post. Is he going to share his page later? I guess we'll see. Let's keep reading. The cool thing about HTMX is that you don't need to write JavaScript yourself. The HTML spec is extended with attributes like hxGet, hxTrigger, hxTarget, and more, which declare the behavior you want. Okay, so very standardized behavior methods that's sort of done through attributes. It seems simple. For example, this is the HTML fragment that I include in my HTML template. Is this from the website? I'm trying to see. Is there any text? 0 comments. Oh, I think this is him like building his little component. Okay. So with .params, .snid. I wonder what this is. It seems kind of like an import or something like that. This seems similar to handlebars syntax, which I also don't know. hxGet. Okay, so doing a GET request to an API endpoint, content meta, passing an SNID. I still don't understand this syntax right here. hxTrigger. Okay, so this GET is triggered on load. hxSwap outer HTML. So you throw the result into outer HTML. I guess that's what that means. Okay, then linking to the item. So on page load, hx trigger, load, a get request to APA content, blah, 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 is triggered, and hx get, and the response replaces span of hx target. Where is target? Outer HTML class. Am I just like not reading this? HX target. Yeah, it's not in this code snippet. Okay. For the backend, I went with Go and Net HTTP, which is part of Go standard lib. I also learned about Temple, which makes it possible to write something like JSX in Go. Wow. This is how I wrote the HTML. Okay, so this is Go code right here. Okay. Format sprint F. And then I ran temple generate in the terminal, which generated Go file, which includes a function that I can call in my request handler to render the HTML. Handle content meta, request response. Taking in parameters, I think. Headers. Options, error handling, if item. That's another error handling. Okay, content meta item dot render r dot context. Okay. So just doing a bunch of checks here essentially, and then just rendering the context. The heavy lifting of fetching the StackerNews item data is done with Snappy. The library there wrote for Hacker News and Knitter. And that is all quite simple, ain't it? I'm really intrigued by HTMX now, even more now that I already was before trying it out. I suspect it wouldn't be that easy in practice. Of course, this is only very basic usage, but at least this very basic usage is indeed very basic. But now I wonder, are there any HTMX devs here? If so, I'd be interested in your experience. Do you like it? What did you build with it? What do you not like about it? I don't love some of these HTMX code snippets, but I mean, I can see the appeal. It just feels a little bit like a Vue to me, Vue, which I tried to use for a little while, and I just found it slowed me down so much. But that's how it always goes at first. Let's see the HTMX reference. Checks on, handle events with inline scripts on elements, push URL, select content to swap from a response, select content to swap in from a response somewhere other than the target. Yeah, this is just like a pretty different paradigm than I'm used to. I get the sense looking at this and how it works that, not that it was hacked together, but you can see how, given the limitations of HTML, they're trying to reach this functionality that you need in, you know, what did they put it here? Modern browser features, I guess, whatever. Dynamically generated websites while still being statically generated. Specifies a target element to be swapped. Specifies the event that triggers a request. But yeah, I mean, you can definitely do a lot just by reading this reference page. I mean, that is something pretty nice. Like we could probably spend like 20 minutes and make a simple website with this, just looking at this document. So that is cool. It seems pretty simple. Should we do an HTMX workshop soon? I don't know. I actually am still trying to finish the Next.js workshop, which shouldn't have taken me that long because I use it all the time, but I'm trying to explain all of the confusing things about Next.js, which is annoying. All right, let's check out the comments here. Oops. I don't program in HTMX, but I like the fact that it doesn't use JavaScript. All right, we gotta dunk on JavaScript when we get the chance. HTMX is JavaScript. Oh my gosh. Snapback. See here, but it allows that you don't have to use JavaScript. That you don't have to use JavaScript. Oh, look at that. .ts, .js. I know what that means. They're just trying to hide it. They're just trying to hide the JavaScript. People just need to like, you just need to embrace how gross it is. It's what you're missing. It's Real Fake says, this is great, thanks for sharing. HTMX looks awesome, and I've been wanting to work with it as well. Okay. Halleck, I am in a similar boat. I am intrigued by HTMX as a solution for simple web tools I maintain for work. I've done some simple proof of concept apps, but haven't taken the dive into actual production track code. Yeah, same here. Using it on my own site was just a proof of concept. Currently, I see HTMX as a way to progressively enhance a website. By default, the server serves static HTML, which should be really fast with something like Nginx. If JavaScript is enabled, HTMX tags will be used to make it more dynamic at the cost of additional round trips via server-side rendering. Yeah, so you have to interact with the server more. You're putting more, would you say, burden on the server versus on the client, which that's not me. I love putting all of the burden on the client, like just eat up my 75 dependencies. Okay, I like this approach from keeping it as simple as possible and then gradually enhancing it. I also started to like constraints since they make me creative, especially when these constraints force me to keep it simple. Just serve HTML, no immediate need for hydration, client-side routing, state management on the client, serving a ton of JavaScript, etc., like as usual for single-page applications built with frameworks like React. I've also read about using a service worker for HTMX that can intercept requests, so you could serve HTML fragments even offline. Whoa, that's crazy. Assuming you could predict what the server would respond with. What the heck? The biggest downside of HTMX seems to be that by default, it does a network request for everything, but it at least eliminates full page reloads since it handles fragments. So if you ever want client-side routing with HTMX, a service worker could be the way. Okay. Well, very cool. A quick look at HTMX from EK. Thank you again, EK. Send you a few more zaps. Okay, what else do we got here that I haven't clicked on, haven't read yet? Check out the latest Plebdevs workshop if you haven't. This is a Cashew wallet workshop. Don't shoot me. Don't shoot me. It's just a little cashew. No big deal. But you know, this builds off of our Plebdevs theory video where we show you a little bit about the history of eCash and how it works. So shout out to Damien for going through this. Damien is actually, you know, he's a humble guy, but he is at the forefront of developing on Cashew. He's done a lot of cool stuff, so it's honestly an honor to be able to learn from him for free. That's what I think, but you know, you don't have to think that. We're just Plebdevs. Okay. Here's one we haven't. Here's a spicy looking one we haven't read. Hating on Python is literally a skill issue. This is from Choke1. And it looks like this is an article that he linked here. Okay. So before we read the article or read his comment, he says, the internet is buzzing, and once again, Python finds itself in the crosshairs. A user sparked a lively debate with her post on X. Hitting on Python is literally a skill issue. This simple statement set off a firestorm of opinions. This is a good template right here for like a clickbaity title. You just replace Python with anything. Hating on X is literally a skill issue. Just an idea for an article there. I could imagine, hating on eCache is just a skill issue. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, let's look at the article. Okay, hating on Python is literally a skill issue. Okay, the point, as succinctly captured in the phrase, suggests that those who criticize Python might be struggling with the language's simplicity and accessibility. That kind of doesn't make any sense. But okay, we'll move on. Whoa. It's reminiscent of the common gripe about C++. C++ is terrible because of memory leaks. I see where this is going. Python, with its straightforward syntax and wide applicability, is easy to pick up but deceptively challenging to master in nuanced and efficient coding. I could agree with that. Some argue that Python is easy to hit on because it's trash language that's merely an abstraction anyway. This critique is not quite uncommon. Many developers accustomed to the power and precision of languages like C++ or Java often find Python's abstract nature frustrating, especially when dealing with performance-intensive applications. Why are you writing your performance-intensive application in Python? That's kind of my question. But what is the issue? Sanjay Nithan offers a more technical criticism, saying can't handle environments properly. Properly handled environments aren't easy to deploy. It takes a lot of time and space to process. These are legitimate concerns, especially in production environments where efficiency and scalability are paramount. That was a little bit of an obtuse sentence right there. Some people have positive criticisms about Python and say that lack of constraints, such as typing, encourages bad practices throughout the ecosystem. Isn't there a typed Python? Is there a Typethon? There has to be. But then you're just you're just typing your Python code, which then gets compiled into C. I don't know. This highlights frequent complaint among seasoned developers that Python's flexibility can lead to sloppy code and poor software engineering practices if not managed properly, which has been a long discussed issue. Conversely, Andre Infante, wow, what a name, argues that programming languages are designed to minimize errors. The whole point of programming languages is to protect you from your own mistakes and making it harder to make them. Skill issues are language issues. The ease of making mistakes in Python is a double-edged sword. It makes the language accessible, but also more prone to user error. Okay, someone says, it is hard to beat Java at speed. I'm an ML engineer, sorry to hear, and Python is slow. Do not write Java whenever you can, or do write Java whenever you can. This critique underscores Python's performance limitations compared to more optimized languages like Java. Blah, blah, blah. AGI will be built on Python. That's a hot take. Despite these criticisms, supporters of Python are unwavering. Seems 100% true. Python is based and will be based. Is that a full quote? What does that mean? Oh my gosh. This sentiment reflects the strong community support and the language's entrenchment in various tech domains, particularly AI and data science. The only reason that people in AI and data science use Python is because they write a bunch of code that they use one time and then they throw it away. Except very rarely when there are some consistent scripts you use. I mean, I don't know. This was my experience, like writing Python at an AI company. Was just like, the only reason we're using Python is because matplotlib and a few other libraries, TensorFlow, and we can write stuff really fast, and we can run, what do they call it? Jupyter notebooks. But I don't know anything. I'm literally don't know what I'm doing. Proficiency and comfort with Python come from skill and familiarity, not inherent flaws in the language. Earlier, AIM made a point that the most frustrating programming language is also one that you work with the most. As the market shows, Python's popularity is no fluke. It's a testament to its broad applicability and the skill of those who wield it effectively. According to Statista, Python is the most popular programming language. All right, let's look at this. Let's look at this chart. I should just click on it, but I'm not going to. The most popular programming languages. Share of the most popular programming languages in the world. So this was a survey. I don't remember being reached out to about this survey, so I don't know if I trust it. But it says Python is used by 25.95% of the programming population. And then behind it is Java. I don't believe that. I do not believe this. Java's number 2 at 21%, and JavaScript number 3 at 8.26%. I don't know. Maybe I'm biased, but 80% of the people that I meet that are devs, they work on JavaScript at least a lot. A lot of them do Python. A lot of them might do like a C++ or a Rust, but I don't know. Java at number 2, 21%. I don't buy it. We got C# behind JavaScript, PHP behind C#. That poor 7% doing PHP. What is this? C and C++. They just lumped them together. That's kind of fucked up. 6.3% for C and C++. What is this R? Oh, that's literally the language R. I forgot. That's like a data analysis language. People use that in college a lot. Then we have Objective-C. I've literally never met anyone who's coded in Objective-C. Swift, MATLAB. What is MATLAB? What? And then TypeScript at 1.57%. This, I don't believe this. I don't believe this at all. I don't believe this. Python's dynamic typing can lead to subtle bugs that may not be caught until runtime, and its performance can sometimes lag behind that of compiled languages like C++. Apart from people heavily discussing how dynamic typing is one of the worst things about Python, it is also the community that makes it worse for people. This is a quote. Python is great for scripting, random tasks, and calling functions implemented in C. It is not great for building applications. This pragmatic take acknowledges Python's strengths and weaknesses, recognizing its utility in specific contexts. In the end, hating Python may indeed be a skill issue. Only a bad craftsperson blames their tools. Good quote. Good quote, but this is literally every developer. Python's simplicity and versatility have made it a staple in the programming world. While it may not be perfect for every application, its accessibility and vast library support make it an indispensable tool for many. Okay, that was a pretty kind of sort of interesting read, 7 out of 10. But it's interesting. I mean, it's an interesting angle that people, yeah, I guess that's why I got all the people's attention. This tweet or whatever. But yeah, I mean, my focus on Python is mainly its ease of use. I think Python is the lowest barrier entry way to start reading code and then to start writing code. This is why I like it. A lot of people, they ask me, what programming language should I learn? Or what language should I learn first? Usually how I respond to this question is, you know, Python is the easiest language to learn, I think. It's very human readable. They abstract away the types. you can kind of just write it and run it. And especially with environments like Replit, I think writing Python in Replit is probably, if you're at 0 right now, it's probably the lowest barrier of entry to start just writing code and getting into writing code. Python running on replit.com. But even though Python, I think, is the easiest, I think learning JavaScript first is better. At least if you want to build apps. I mean, it depends on what you want to do in software. There's a billion different things you could do. But for what I focus on, which is building apps, JavaScript is the best place to start. It's going to be a little bit more difficult learning that first language with JavaScript. Python would be a little bit easier. But the thing is, once you learn JavaScript and you go through the steps and maybe you learn a framework, you can do everything. You can work on the front end, you can work on the back end, you make servers, you make websites, you make apps, you make desktop apps, you make mobile apps, make PWAs. You can do AI with JavaScript, right? You can do Bitcoin with JavaScript. It's very empowering, because once you have that fundamental understanding of JavaScript, you're comfortable with it. The world is really your oyster. There's a lot of things that you can reach out and grab and just start doing. And that's very empowering. So that's what I found. That's why I encourage people to do that. But the reality is, once you get into higher echelons of writing software or whatever, these considerations with language are going to become a little more nuanced, like talking about performance and basically what everyone in this article was complaining about, right? The further along you get, the more powerful, robust software you make, the more you need to consider the gaps in. It's not always in the language, but it's a lot easier to make mistakes writing Python. You might be able to spend a week writing a Python app and go ship it, and then your users will have a terrible time and you'll have a terrible time, and it'll be full of bugs and things you didn't think of. If you wrote the same app in Rust, you would spend almost all of that pain up front, and it would take you a month to write your app. But once you release it, it would just run and it would be performant, right? So this is, I think, the dynamic that it comes down to a lot. Okay, let's see what the comment from Nerd to Ninja is here. The skill issue being understanding how to write C, so you can package your code as a module to import it into Python code. Import it into your Python code base. LOL. And actually, I think this article is satire now that I've read it. I kind of was thinking that too. I think they gave me fake data. I think that whole language, that screwed with my head. I don't like that. That made me mad. Java, the number 2 language. Come on. But okay, well, fun read. Thank you for sharing, Choke. All right, good lord. Hour and a half in. That went by fast. I think I've literally read like 4 stories. So I have these 2 stories set aside. This is a monster of a story right here, summarizing my thoughts on eCash from Seth for Privacy. I don't think I'm gonna go through this. I'm already deep into it. So let's skip past this one. But this one from Super Testnet here, this is a fun one. I wanted to show this off for sure. So Super Testnet announces Super Testnet workshops. He says, I am starting a series of monthly workshops, first one on June 25th, where you can learn Bitcoin programming. We start this month with a workshop on Bitcoin script. Buy a ticket for only $20 or purchase a pre-recorded version for only $5. Oh, that's interesting. Check it out and let me know what you think. Okay, let's watch Super's trailer here.
In a world where Bitcoin coding is actually fun.
So, earlier I mentioned that this is probably the worst presentation I've ever done.
So if that worked for you, you are now one of the few and proud who have used Taproot for something.
Join Super Testnet as he informs and entertains.
In this lesson, we are going to learn how to build our first basic Nostr application. So it wants us to create a password. I'm going to use the word password as my password. Never do that.
Learn about Bitcoin script.
First thing we see on here is a signature.
Nostr.
Nostr's not cool unless you do multiple relays.
The Lightning Network.
But that's not what we're going to do. This is the wrong way to do it. We're going to do it the right way, and we're going to install LND.
BitVM.
A new folder, new document pulled up here. This is where the code base for BitVM is going to go.
Privacy.
Do you have to use Tor? Yeah, you do.
Coin joins.
All coin joins are collaborative spending transactions, or I call them batch transactions, because there's multiple people.
And more.
Because I don't mind if my head looks screwy as long as my body looks great.
From Super Testnet, world-renowned Bitcoin educator.
This is Bob. Bob has a Bitcoin. He wants to send it to Alice. Alice has a wallet. And so,
Join his latest series of workshops.
What's all this? I don't know how to read this. This is code. What am I doing?
For only $20, you'll not only learn how to code,
so what do we got in here? Well, we've got something called contract that is an object that's going to eventually have a bunch of transactions in it.
you'll have fun doing it too.
Half the presentation's done. We got LN bits running.
Sign up today at supertestnet.org.
Amazing. 10 out of 10 trailer. It did the full voiceover himself. Just took live footage. That's awesome. I after watching that, I have to take this and make a meme or a GIF out of like this part right here.
Privacy.
Do you have to use Tor? Yeah, you do.
The code base for BitVM is going to go.
Privacy.
Do you have to use Tor? Yeah, you do.
Coin joins.
All coin joins are collaborative spending
I have to steal that. I have to steal that. That is amazing. Yeah, you do. You freaking do. Okay, well, I'm super excited about this. I kind of knew this was coming up. Super let me know. I don't even know. I think he's people that purchase the workshops. I think he's inviting them into the Plebdevs Discord. So you can. Oh yeah, I'm live on Twitch. You can join the Plebdevs Discord right here. There's a lot of us in here. You can reach out to me and Good Enough definitely for help. And you can find how to get to the Plebdevs Discord at plebdevs.com. We have a join button right here, so check that out. But yeah, definitely, if you have the $20, learn from literally one of the best Bitcoin hackers in the world and one of the best Bitcoin teachers in the world. Yeah, this is an amazing opportunity, and I'm glad Super is charging for this. I think that's a step. That's a step in the right direction for him. He's done a lot of free open source stuff, but the man needs to get paid. So check it out. Okay, let's get music back on. Let's check out the comments here. I'll be checking this out. June 25th is a long travel day for me, but sounds like I can get a pre-recorded version. Yep. I hope you enjoy the pre-recorded version, which is available for purchase now at this link. Okay, so supertestnet.org. And we have... Cool, look at this. So you can buy a ticket or... Oh, and he's using Shopster. That's awesome. Shout out to Shopster. Top builder finalists, Shopster. So buy a ticket there, or we've got the paid version right here. And then he has a free version as well. That's really cool. He's giving all the options. Please support me monetarily some other time. Yeah, and this is just a public video. Nice. Yeah, especially when it comes to learning Bitcoin script. I mean, Super is unparalleled. This man has written tens of thousands of lines of raw Bitcoin script. Yeah, he has experience like no one else. Okay, Diet on Titan says, Oh, I need to be zapping. Oh, I zapped it. I zapped it. Okay, just starting to dig in, and in true Super Testnet style, we start off with an unexpected error, lol. I honestly love the raw, unedited, unpolished, and unfiltered style you bring. The innovation and value that pours out of you overcomes all the glitches by a very wide margin. That's actually really cool to hear. I know that sometimes, like, I do, whatever, various live workshops and live hacks and stuff like that, and sometimes I feel like I run into bugs and I'm like, oh no, we're not supposed to run into bugs. But you forget that, especially new people, they wanna see you run into the bug. They wanna see how you problem solve around it. And Super is really good at that, and really good at just being casual and cool with it. So yeah, great comment. Super, lol, I found out later that error was simply due to opening up the wrong console. The wrong console. It's a Firefox thing, maybe. Done. Purchase successful. Manichees, I have developed for decades, and I have no idea how to program around Bitcoin. This will be great. Awesome. We need you. If you've been programming for decades, please come work on Bitcoin. Learn from Super. I will sponsor your $20 workshop. Don't forget the keys. Says, teach me how to wallet. Cool. Nerta Ninja. Psst. Web search still works. He links to a beginner's guide to Bitcoin wallets using Rust. I've never seen this. Oh, medium though. Look, it's disgusting. Why are you cramping up my screen, cramping up my style? Wow, this is really short. We're building a beginner's guide to building Bitcoin wallet in Rust. Understanding Bitcoin wallets, different type of Bitcoin wallets, custodial, non-custodial. Introducing Rust, setting up Rust environment. Yeah, just cargo. Bitcoin D, Bitcoin Core RPC. Init the RPC client, make a new RPC user, connect to your Bitcoin D. Yep, and then wallet name. And then we're just calling RPC methods directly in Rust. The final code shown below. This is cool. I have done something similar. If you go to YouTube, youtube.com/@plebdevs, you will see, oh yeah, I'm live right now. We have our, somewhere in here, there's a Bitcoin Core beginner workshop. Yes, right here. This workshop is very similar to this Rust guide. We spend a lot more time talking about it though, but it's essentially, this is having you set up an interface to talk to your Bitcoin Core node. And then you can use, instead of writing your own, implementations of these very low level Bitcoin protocol stuff, you use Bitcoin Core to do that, and you're just calling Bitcoin Core. So that's what this wallet is doing. We do a very similar thing with the Bitcoin Core beginner workshop. We just use JavaScript. So consider checking that out. Anyway, this is a side panel here. But yeah, cool little short post there. Everything Satoshi. I built my first Nostr app courtesy of you though, so thanks. Hey, me too, Everything Satoshi. Super also taught me how to build my first Nostr app. And yeah, ever since then I've been retarded, so I'm just kidding. It's not funny, sorry. Pleb Poet, yay, Super Testnet. I love this promo video so much. Me too. Bitcoin is the future. Sweet, thanks. This is the way. Can't wait. I also can't wait. Okay, he's sharing links here. Technical difficulties. Koob says, has Shopster outdone Magic Web Store? Also, I didn't know you had a web page. Super testnet. Yes, because Ellen Bits changed their wallet generation API in a way that broke Magic Web Store. Feels bad, man. I've had my all of my Ellen Bits apps I've built are, I think at this point, completely broken. So feels bad, man. Ellen Bits also lost a lot of people's money when they got hacked, and now their Lightning node rarely seems to work. Okay, to be fair here, this statement's a little of a blanket statement. The legend.ellenbits instance got hacked. So this instance was specifically, it was supposed to be for testing, for development. It was a fully custodial Ellen Bits that they were running. And there was lots of warnings all over it. But yeah, that's what got hacked, at least from my understanding. Maybe, call me out if I'm wrong. Shopster's only real downside relative to Magic Web Store is that it requires buyers to log in with Nostr, which is dumb and unnecessary. But hey, I can probably fork it and fix that. Shopster, get on this. You're about to get forked by a legend. Get on this, fix it. Why do we need a Nostr pub key? They might have a good reason, I don't know. But I love the option of like, sign in with Nostr or sign in with email. Because then the people that are like, what the fuck is Nostr? They can just sign in with the email, right? And the people that know, they know, and they'll respect it. Also, I didn't know you had a webpage. Super says, oh yes, my journey to becoming an influencer is nearly complete. Now I just need to find something to sell my followers. Oh wait. When Super tests net coin, I would buy it. I'm just saying. It's not financial advice, but this is awesome. Congrats, brother. Let us know if you need any help at the lab. Car, shout out. EK says, is this voice from Honest Game Trailers? If so, perfect choice. Super says, no, that's my voice. I just imitated that classic gravelly trailer voice. Okay, lots of super love here, but we can move on. I could talk about this guy all day, but we can move on. Did I get to all of the best and the brightest? Let's see. Okay. Yeah, we can call it here for the stories. So, what time is it? 6:45. Okay, I'm gonna take a